rap on the West Coast today?
Game.
Damn, that was quick.
Yeah, that's it.
Ain't nobody getting at you?
Can't nobody out-rap me, man.
The hip-hop world just exploded. In a bold and unfiltered Club Shay Shay appearance, West Coast legend The Game didn't just stir debate, he officially called himself the best rapper out of Compton and Los Angeles, putting that crown above Kendrick Lamar's. Claiming he can out-rhyme and out-rap one of the genre's most respected lyricists, Game's declaration has ignited a fierce online firestorm and reignited arguably the biggest rap identity debate in years. Before this rivalry gets any deeper, subscribe and stay locked in, because this isn't just ego talking, this is about legacy, power, and who really owns Los Angeles hip-hop. In early December 2025, West Coast rap veteran The Game thrust the hip-hop world into a fresh storm of debate during a wide-ranging interview on Club Shay Shay with Shannon Sharpe, the same platform where artists and personalities routinely make bold, headline-grabbing statements. What startled fans and critics alike wasn't a new track or promotional push. It was his confident assertion that he is the greatest rapper to ever emerge from Compton and Los Angeles, surpassing even Kendrick Lamar in skill and impact. With over 2 decades in the industry and a legacy rooted in the early 2000s West Coast Renaissance, from his breakout on The Documentary to his recent project, Gangsta Grill's Every Movie Needs a Trailer, The Game framed his claim around longevity, versatility, and lyrical prowess. "I'm definitely the best rapper from Compton. Can't nobody out-rap me," he said emphatically, insisting that his skill set and experience put him at the pinnacle of his city's storied hip-hop lineage. Compton isn't just another city in hip-hop, it's a cultural bedrock. From Eazy-E and Dr. Dre to Ice Cube and DJ Quick, its artists are woven into the very DNA of the genre. But in the 2010s and beyond, no Compton artist has been more critically and commercially celebrated than Kendrick Lamar, a multiple Grammy winner lauded for his intricate lyricism, storytelling mastercraft, and cultural resonance. While Kendrick wasn't directly present in the interview, fans immediately began mentioning him online as the de facto counterpoint to The Game's claim. Some defending Kendrick as the true voice of Compton, others debating stylistic differences or the nature of legacy itself. This moment isn't just about ego. It taps into broader conversations dominating hip-hop culture today. What defines greatness? Is it commercial success, influence on the sound of a generation, technical skill, or longevity? And crucially, is there room for more than one king in the same city's legacy? The reaction from social media, commentators like DJ Academics, and fan communities suggests that this debate is far from settled and could redefine how regional hip-hop legacies are viewed in 2026 and beyond. To understand why The Game's comments hit such a nerve, you have to go back to where this story really begins: Compton, California. Few cities on earth carry the cultural weight that Compton does in hip-hop. It isn't just a place, it's a proving ground, a mythological battleground where reputations are forged through survival, storytelling, and credibility. And both The Game and Kendrick Lamar are products of that same soil, but from different eras, different philosophies, and different visions of greatness. The Game, born Jason Taylor in 1979, came up during a moment when West Coast rap was fighting for relevance. By the early 2000s, the dominance of Death Row Records had faded, gangster rap had lost its mainstream grip, and Southern rap was rapidly taking over radio and charts. According to industry retrospectives from publications like XXL and Rolling Stone, the West Coast was widely viewed as commercially stagnant, respected for its legacy, but no longer shaping the future. That's the environment The Game walked into. Discovered and mentored by Dr. Dre and later aligned with 50 Cent and G-Unit, The Game positioned himself as the bridge between the classic West Coast sound and a new generation. His 2005 debut album, The Documentary, wasn't just successful, it was symbolic. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and featured production from Kanye West, Just Blaze, Timbaland, and Dr. Dre himself. Songs like Hate It or Love It and How We Do reintroduced Compton to a mainstream audience that had shifted its attention elsewhere. In interviews over the years, The Game has repeatedly framed this moment as a rescue mission. According to multiple podcast appearances and print interviews, he believes he kept the West alive at a time when the industry had largely moved on. That belief is central to his self-image, not just as a rapper, but as a cultural torchbearer. But The Game's career has never been just about music. From the very beginning, controversy followed him. His public fallout with 50 Cent fractured G-Unit. He engaged in highly visible feuds with artists like Jay-Z, Meek Mill, Rick Ross, and others. According to industry analysts, the game's aggressive lyrical style and constant name-dropping became both his signature and his Achilles heel, drawing attention while also alienating parts of the industry. Still, his work ethic was undeniable. Album after album, the game remained present. Doctor's Advocate, LAX, The Red Album, Jesus Piece, 1992, Born to Rap. Each project reinforced his reputation as a technically skilled, highly competitive MC. In lyrical breakdowns published by outlets like Genius and Complex, the game is often praised for multisyllabic rhyme schemes, punchlines, and adaptability across beats. Longevity became his argument. Then came Kendrick Lamar. Born in 1987, Kendrick represents a different Compton story, one shaped less by industry alliances and more by introspection and narrative complexity. Kendrick's rise was slower, quieter, and far more deliberate. Early mixtapes like Overly Dedicated and Section 80 earned underground acclaim, but it wasn't until Good Kid, Mad City in 2012 that Kendrick became a generational figure. According to critics from the New York Times, Pitchfork, and Rolling Stone, Kendrick didn't just rap about Compton, he documented it. His albums played like films, morally complex, emotionally raw, and structurally ambitious. While the game leaned into dominance and bravado, Kendrick leaned into vulnerability, contradiction, and social critique. This matters. Because in hip-hop, greatness is subjective, but it's also contextual. The game came up when asserting dominance was survival. Kendrick came up when the genre was ready for nuance. That's why their legacies are so often compared, not because they sound alike, but because they represent two answers to the same question. What does it mean to be the voice of Compton? Awards widened the gap. Kendrick's career quickly became decorated with accolades, Grammy wins, Pulitzer recognition, and near-universal critical acclaim. Publications regularly placed him on Greatest Rapper Alive lists, and his albums were dissected in academic and cultural studies. Meanwhile, the game remained prolific, but less celebrated by institutions that now champion Kendrick as the genre's intellectual standard-bearer. According to hip-hop historians, this shift created an unspoken tension, not a personal beef, but a legacy imbalance. Kendrick became the symbol of modern West Coast excellence, while the game was increasingly viewed as part of an earlier chapter. But the game never accepted that framing. In interviews stretching back nearly a decade, he has repeatedly pushed back against narratives that place Kendrick above him. He's argued that Kendrick benefited from the groundwork laid by artists like himself. He's claimed influence, mentorship, and stylistic lineage, even stating at times that Kendrick studied his approach. These comments were often dismissed as bravado, until now. What makes the game's recent declaration different is its finality. This wasn't a subliminal line in a verse. It wasn't an offhand tweet. It was a direct, confident assertion made on one of the biggest interview platforms in hip-hop media, knowing exactly how it would land. And fans noticed. Social media reaction was immediate and polarized. Some longtime West Coast fans echoed the game's argument, pointing to his discography, lyrical consistency, and role in keeping Compton visible during the 2000s. Others dismissed the claim outright, citing Kendrick's cultural impact, conceptual albums, and influence on modern rap storytelling. According to social media analytics reported by entertainment outlets, Kendrick's name trended alongside the games for days after the interview, not because Kendrick responded, but because the culture responded for him. And that's the key tension at the heart of this story. The game believes greatness is earned through battle, output, and endurance. Kendrick represents greatness through artistry, innovation, and resonance. Two Compton legends, two definitions of dominance, one crown that hip-hop may never unanimously award. And this foundation is why a single statement from the game wasn't just talk, it was a challenge to history itself. The spark didn't come from a diss record. It didn't come from leaked bars, cryptic tweets, or a surprise verse. It came from certainty. When the game sat across from Shannon Sharpe and calmly declared himself the best rapper out of Los Angeles, even over Kendrick Lamar, it wasn't delivered with anger. It was delivered with conviction. And in hip-hop, confidence without qualifiers is often more explosive than open hostility. What made the moment combustible was not just what he said, but how he framed it. According to those present during the interview and clips that circulated widely afterward, the Game didn't hedge his words. He didn't say one of the best. He didn't say in my era. He didn't say subjectively. He said plainly that nobody from Compton could out-rap him, and that included Kendrick Lamar. That framing changed everything, because in hip-hop culture, calling yourself the best is expected. Calling yourself better than Kendrick Lamar in the middle of his prime, without provocation, without a response track waiting, that's a declaration of war whether you intend it or not. The internet understood that immediately. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok. Reaction videos flooded YouTube. Hip-hop commentators dissected every word, every pause, every expression on the Game's face. According to digital engagement trackers cited by entertainment blogs, the clip generated millions of views across platforms in less than 48 hours, and the reactions split cleanly down generational lines. Older fans, particularly those who came of age in the early 2000s, largely defended the Game. They pointed to his technical ability, his battle-tested career, and his role in re-establishing West Coast relevance after the death row era. Many argued that Kendrick's acclaim doesn't erase the years the Game spent carrying the Compton banner, when few others were doing so at a mainstream level. Younger fans, however, were far less forgiving. For them, Kendrick Lamar isn't just a rapper, he's a cultural institution. His albums are taught, analyzed, and cited. His lyrics are scrutinized for social commentary. His influence extends beyond hip-hop into academia, politics, and global culture. To these fans, the Game's claim felt less like confidence and more like denial. What intensified the spark was Kendrick's silence. No tweet, no interview, no response track, no subliminals. Nothing. In hip-hop history, silence can mean many things: strategy, indifference, restraint. But in this case, many interpreted it as dominance. According to commentary from veteran journalists, Kendrick's refusal to engage allowed the culture to defend him organically without him lifting a finger. That absence became part of the story. Meanwhile, the Game leaned in. In follow-up appearances and social media posts, he doubled down on his stance. He reiterated his belief that lyricism, consistency, and longevity matter more than awards or critical praise. He framed the debate as one of skill versus perception, arguing that Kendrick's acclaim is driven by institutions that don't reflect the street-level realities where hip-hop was born. This is where the spark turned philosophical, because beneath the surface, this wasn't just the Game versus Kendrick Lamar. It was a clash between two visions of hip-hop excellence. One vision prioritizes bars, battle readiness, volume of work, and competitive dominance. The other prioritizes conceptual cohesion, cultural impact, narrative depth, artistic evolution. According to cultural analysts, this divide mirrors a broader tension within modern hip-hop between those who see rap as a competitive sport and those who see it as a narrative art form. And the Game made it clear which side he stands on. He referenced his ability to rap over any beat, to outlast trends, to adapt across eras. He positioned himself as an MC's MC, the kind of rapper other rappers respect, even if critics don't elevate him to the same pedestal as Kendrick. But critics weren't convinced. Music journalists quickly revisited both artists' catalogs, comparing discographies, lyrical themes, and influence. While the Game's consistency was acknowledged, many concluded that Kendrick's peaks were simply higher, that his albums reshaped conversations in ways the Game's never did. That judgment only fueled the fire. Because in hip-hop, being told your impact doesn't match your effort is one of the deepest insults imaginable. And then came the fan debates. Side-by-side lyric comparisons, streaming number breakdowns, award tallies, cultural impact essays, even polls asking who really runs LA. According to multiple outlets, Kendrick won the majority of these informal polls by wide margins. But the Game's supporters argued that popularity doesn't equal superiority, and that hip-hop was never meant to be decided by consensus. That argument has precedent. Legends like Nas, Black Thought, and Ghostface Killah have all been celebrated for lyrical excellence without dominating mainstream metrics. The Game's defenders placed him in that lineage, respected, feared, uncompromising. Still, the elephant in the room remained. Kendrick Lamar had never publicly acknowledged the game as a rival. That imbalance, one artist asserting dominance, the other remaining untouched, shifted the narrative from rivalry to reckoning. Was the game challenging Kendrick? Or was he challenging the culture that crowned Kendrick without his consent? Because by claiming the title of best, the game wasn't just calling out Kendrick, he was calling out the critics, the institutions, the award bodies, and the fans who elevated Kendrick above everyone else. And that made the spark dangerous, not because it guaranteed a diss track, but because it exposed a fracture line in hip-hop's value system, a fracture that had been there all along. Once the spark was lit, escalation became inevitable, even without a single bar exchanged. Because in hip-hop, escalation doesn't always come from music, sometimes it comes from pressure. As the game's comments continued to circulate, the conversation shifted from debate to challenge. Media outlets weren't just reporting what he said, they were framing it as a direct test of Kendrick Lamar's standing. Headlines began posing the question outright: what happens if Kendrick responds? And just as importantly, what does it mean if he doesn't? That framing created a trap. If Kendrick responded, it validated the game's claim that he was worthy of a lyrical confrontation. If he stayed silent, critics could argue he had nothing to prove, reinforcing his position at the top. According to veteran hip-hop commentators, this is one of the oldest dynamics in rap history. The challenger needs engagement, the king benefits from distance. And Kendrick maintained that distance, but the culture didn't. Podcasts, radio shows, and YouTube breakdown channels began re-examining moments from the past, lines, interviews, collaborations, searching for any evidence of long-standing tension. Old quotes resurfaced, lyrics were scrutinized, fans dissected Kendrick's catalog looking for subliminals even when none were clearly present. In hip-hop escalation, perception often outruns reality. One moment repeatedly cited was Kendrick's long-standing association with Top Dog Entertainment and his alignment with artists who positioned themselves as lyricist first, star second. Analysts contrasted this with the game's more confrontational history, his public feuds, his willingness to name names, his readiness for lyrical warfare. This contrast hardened positions. Supporters of the game argued that Kendrick's silence was avoidance, that true MCs respond when challenged. They invoked the traditions of battle rap, where silence is interpreted as concession. According to this view, Kendrick's refusal to engage undermined the competitive spirit hip-hop was built on. Kendrick's supporters countered that greatness isn't proven by responding to every provocation. They pointed to his selective approach throughout his career, rarely engaging in public beef, rarely chasing controversy, and allowing his work to speak for itself. This back and forth didn't just escalate tension between fan bases, it escalated expectations. Suddenly, every Kendrick appearance became potential evidence. A live performance? Fans scanned for altered lyrics. A feature verse? Analyzed for hidden shots. A delayed project? Speculated as strategic silence. None of it materialized. Meanwhile, the game continued to assert himself, not with insults, but with reminders. He referenced his catalog, his experience, his hunger. He framed himself as someone still ready to step into the ring, regardless of whether Kendrick accepted the invitation. That posture mattered. Because escalation isn't just about attack, it's about positioning. The game positioned himself as the aggressor, the challenger, the fighter still hungry for validation through competition. Kendrick remained positioned as the untouchable, the artist whose legacy didn't require defense. And that imbalance intensified frustration. Industry insiders began weighing in carefully. Some acknowledged the game's lyrical ability while stopping short of endorsing his claim. Others openly sided with Kendrick, citing influence, innovation, and consistency at the highest artistic level. According to cultural analysts, this moment revealed how hip-hop has changed. In earlier eras, disputes were settled with records. Today, they're often settled by narrative dominance. Who controls the story? Who commands cultural respect? And who can afford silence? The escalation reached a peak not because of something Kendrick did, but because of what he didn't. Silence became a statement, and as days turned into weeks without a response, the conversation subtly shifted. The initial shock faded, replaced by a colder assessment.
Was this ever a real rivalry, or was it a one-sided assertion against an unmovable legacy? That question cut deep. Because for the game, Escalation was about recognition, acknowledgement that his career, his bars, his sacrifices mattered in the same historical breath as Kendrick's. For Kendrick, Escalation may not have existed at all. And that difference between fighting to be crowned and being treated as already crowned is where this story reaches its most uncomfortable truth. Escalation doesn't always end in explosions. Sometimes it ends in exposure. Exposure of how power works. Exposure of whose voice carries weight. Exposure of who needs the battle and who doesn't. And as the noise began to settle, one thing became clear. This wasn't about who could rap better in a booth. It was about who the culture had already decided to listen to. When the noise finally began to die down, what remained wasn't a clear winner, it was a reckoning. Because the fallout from the game's declaration didn't damage Kendrick Lamar. It didn't alter his standing, disrupt his career, or force a public response. Instead, it redirected scrutiny back onto the game himself, his legacy, his motivations, and his place in hip-hop's evolving hierarchy. And that's where the consequences truly landed.
In the weeks following the interview, coverage shifted from the claim to the implications. Journalists and commentators began asking why this moment mattered so much to the game and why it mattered now. According to industry observers, the timing wasn't random. Kendrick remained largely absent from the public eye musically, while the game had recently released new projects and continued making media rounds. Visibility once again played a role. That observation fueled a harsher narrative that the game was chasing relevance. It's a familiar accusation in hip-hop, one often levied against veterans who challenge younger or more critically dominant artists. But supporters push back strongly, arguing that asserting greatness isn't clout chasing, it's part of the genre's DNA. From Muhammad Ali-style bravado to rap's earliest battle traditions, self-coronation has always been central. Still, perception matters. On social media, jokes and memes began circulating, not attacking the game's skill, but questioning his need for validation. Some fans pointed out that Kendrick has rarely spoken about rankings at all, while the game has repeatedly engaged in public comparisons throughout his career. That contrast sharpened criticism. Music critics revisited the game's discography with a more critical lens. While acknowledging his technical ability, many argued that his albums lacked the thematic cohesion and long-term cultural imprint that defined Kendrick's work. According to multiple think pieces published in hip-hop media, the game's strength, adaptability, may have also diluted his artistic identity over time. But that critique wasn't universal. Veteran MCs and longtime West Coast fans continued to defend the game, emphasizing that influence isn't always institutional. They argued that not all greatness is rewarded with Grammys or critical acclaim, and that lyrical respect within the culture still holds value. This divide revealed something uncomfortable. Hip-hop now measures success through multiple, often conflicting scorecards. One scorecard rewards innovation, conceptual depth, and critical impact. Another rewards output, competitiveness, and street credibility. The game scores high on one, Kendrick scores high on the other, and the culture struggles to reconcile the two. The fallout also reignited discussion around generational transitions in hip-hop. Every era crowns its champions, and those crowns often come at the expense of those who came before. For some observers, the game's comments reflected not arrogance, but resistance, a refusal to be written out of the story. And that resistance resonated with artists who feel similarly overshadowed. Behind the scenes, industry insiders noted that the game's comments had little impact on booking, streaming, or Kendrick's market position, but they did succeed in one area. They forced a conversation about who controls hip-hop's narrative of greatness. And that conversation isn't going away. By the end of the fallout phase, the question had evolved. It was no longer, is the game better than Kendrick Lamar? It became, what do we value more in hip-hop? Competition or contribution? Presence or perspective? Longevity or legacy? And in that question, the game may have already gotten what he wanted. Not a response from Kendrick, not a diss track, not a public showdown, but attention. And attention in hip-hop is power, even when it comes with criticism. The fallout didn't crown a king, it exposed a system. One where silence can be dominance, one where confidence can be misread as insecurity.
one where legacy is shaped as much by perception as by performance. And as the dust settled, one truth stood firm. Kendrick Lamar didn't need to respond. The culture already had.
At its core, The Game versus Kendrick Lamar isn't a traditional rap beef. It's a referendum on how hip-hop defines greatness in the modern era. The Game's claim forces an uncomfortable confrontation between two value systems that now coexist uneasily within the culture. Historically, hip-hop rewarded conquest. MCs proved dominance through battles, volume, and fearlessness. In that framework, The Game's argument is coherent. His longevity, technical ability, and willingness to engage publicly aligned with an older competitive ethic, one where silence was weakness and self-coronation was survival. But Kendrick Lamar represents a newer paradigm. His authority doesn't come from confrontation, but from consensus, critical acclaim, institutional validation, and cultural resonance. His silence functions not as avoidance, but as insulation. When the culture defends you without your participation, your power becomes structural rather than performative. This clash reveals a shift in hip-hop's power dynamics. The microphone is no longer the only battleground. Influence now operates through narrative control, timing, and absence. Kendrick's refusal to engage denies the game the traditional tools of escalation, effectively neutralizing the challenge without confrontation. The Game's frustration, then, isn't about Kendrick alone. It's about a culture that no longer resolves disputes on his terms. His statement is less an attack than a protest against metrics he doesn't believe reflect true mastery. In that sense, this moment isn't about who's better. It's about who gets to decide and by what rules. This moment reflects a broader generational shift in hip-hop, where dominance is no longer earned solely through lyrical confrontation, but through cultural authority. As rap has moved from street corners to institutions, artists like Kendrick Lamar benefit from systems that reward narrative depth and critical alignment, while veterans like The Game often find themselves battling for recognition in a landscape they helped build but no longer control. Unless Kendrick Lamar chooses to engage, which history suggests is unlikely, this moment will stand as a cultural footnote rather than a full-fledged feud. But it may embolden other veterans to challenge the modern hierarchy, reshaping future debates around legacy. The Game didn't attack Kendrick Lamar, he challenged the system that crowned him, and in doing so, he exposed how power in hip-hop now truly works. So now the question is yours. Is greatness about bars and battle, or impact and silence? Does hip-hop still crown kings in the booth or in the culture? Drop your take in the comments, subscribe for more deep dive documentaries, and stay tuned, because in hip-hop, the loudest moment isn't always the most powerful one.